With us tonight, Natasha Hausdorff. She's a barrister. She volunteers as a legal director of the UK Lawyers for Israel Charitable Trust. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Christian. Good to be with you.
In this order, Donald Trump said the ICC had abused its power by issuing the warrants which he claimed had set a dangerous precedent. How has it abused its power?
In three principal respects. Firstly, in acting outside of its jurisdiction. We have to remember that Israel is not a member state of the ICC, and the Palestinian Authority, not constituting a state, isn't in a position to join the court. The court works on the basis of jurisdiction that is delegated to it. And jurisdiction is an important issue because it's what differentiates a court from simply a political body. So the breach of the court's own founding statute, the Rome Statute, and acting outside of its own powers in this respect, outside of its own jurisdiction, is the first problem here. Secondly, the court has breached its own rules. Importantly, the rule of complementarity, whereby domestic jurisdictions are given priority. So this is a court that is meant to complement existing state jurisdictions and only follow up where a state is unwilling or unable to fully investigate and prosecute any credible allegations. There's no suggestion that Israel is not a country of law and order, where rule of law is prized, and certainly the track record of the state authorities in pursuing criminals of all sorts is well established. So that breach of the rule of complementarity to apply for arrest warrants, as Karim Khan did, even in the course of Israel's war against Hamas, in the course of there already being multiple investigations by the Military Advocate General Corps, the lawyers, those issues being ongoing, that's been considered to be a breach of complementarity. But the third issue here is perhaps the most shocking, which is that the court has ultimately issued arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Yoav Gallant, the former Defense Secretary, on the basis of entirely false information. Every phrase of every sentence of Karim Khan's application, which was made public, which in and of itself is very unusual, was shown to be false. It has alleged... But if that is the case, the Secretary General of Amnesty International said today, it sends the message, that Israel's above the law, that universal principles of international justice don't apply to Israel. If Benjamin Netanyahu thinks the evidence that the court has gathered is flawed, then why doesn't he fight it? Because the impression it gives is that he's afraid of facing up to those allegations. Forgive me, Amnesty International is wrong on this.
No, but the premise of the argument is right.
No, it's not, because this is no longer a court by any common usage of the term. As I indicated, once jurisdiction is thrown out of the window, it becomes a political body. And the agenda that the court has pursued here, the ICC has pursued here, is plain. Many people have suggested that this is an attempt for the court to rehabilitate itself. It has come under significant criticism over 20 years of existence in failing to live up to the lofty aspirations of its founders, but here to pursue and even to issue arrest warrants on the basis of this information, which has been shown to be false. I mean, it is predicated. But
the United States didn't complain when they prosecuted Vladimir Putin, did they?
If I just may finish this point, it is predicated, let's be clear, on this false allegation of starvation. Anyone who has seen the release of hostages over the last few weeks and these shocking images of them being
You don't think there was starvation in Gaza?
By crowds. No, it's been shown pretty flatly that every allegation of starvation or famine has been shown to be false, and those Palestinian civilians...
Well, the United Nations would disagree with you on that point, and so indeed actually with the Secretary of State of the last administration, who complained bitterly about the amount of aid that was going in. Just one thought, the EU could set up a financial system that would allow the court staff to function irrespective of Donald Trump's sanctions, so it might not free Mr. Netanyahu from this charge. One day he might have to defend it.
Let me be clear, it's evident this court never anticipated Benjamin Netanyahu being arrested or having to answer to these charges, else it would not have issued this arrest warrant in such a public fashion. I mentioned that a public summary by the prosecutor of his application is unprecedented. It's an additional indication that this has been a PR exercise, a circus in order to gain credibility for this court, which, as I indicated, has been resoundingly criticised because of its abject failures to rehabilitate itself by going after the world's punching bag, the only Jewish state. And in this respect, by alleging starvation when we can all see with our own eyes on the coverage of the BBC over the last few days that those Palestinian civilians are well and healthy, and where every allegation of starvation or famine in reports has been discredited, including by UN bodies, the Famine Review Committee, who has said that the IPC reports that predicted famine were implausible and based on incomplete information, and where those reports have
We've also had plenty of doctors on who would deny that, who are there and on the ground and are treating people for malnutrition.
Well, I would advocate that you and others read the recent UK Lawyers for Israel paper that has gone through chapter and verse of all of those famine review reports and has demonstrated on the basis of publicly available information put out by COGAT, which is the unit of the IDF, that records the volume of international aid that has been going into the Gaza Strip, the volume of aid, and in fact the calorie count, which has been significantly in excess of the NHS guidelines.
Well, we could go back over that ground. Honestly, we could go back over that ground, but there are plenty of people who would dispute the point you're making about the number of trucks that went in and the amount of aid that was distributed. Listen, we are up against the clock. Natasha Hausdorff, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. You might have some thoughts about that. Do feel free, of course, to get in touch with us as ever by the usual channels. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News.